So we're still sitting with this beautiful young male leopard, and look how he's just put his neck all the way down. It doesn't look very comfortable, does it? But he appears to be comfortable. He's really enjoying it. Now, I'm not entirely sure when this leopard's going to decide to move. He's probably going to lie here, well, anywhere for another 5 minutes or 5 hours. Who knows? It really depends. It also depends if the female comes back and calls him. If she perhaps has a kill for him to feed on. But he's been resting here, it looks like, for quite some time, and he's very comfortable up there. No need for him to move around too much. I think what happened was, I think this female had a kill early this morning, and she went and fetched these 2 young cubs and brought them back to the area where the kill was. They may have fed. I'm not sure how much of the kill was left. I don't know. I didn't see it. But it's amazing that they will move during the day, and a lot of people, I was mentioning it earlier, how people think leopards generally move around at night, but they do move during the day. They just can be very elusive if they want to. I think what I'm going to do is, we've had such a wonderful afternoon with this leopard. He's been very good to us and resting on the termite mound. Probably going to leave him, and maybe what I'll do is I'm going to check this area very carefully, just see if I can't find any sign of the female, or the 2 females, the adult and the young female, see if they are in this area. I do think they are, but they could be anywhere. They could be down in a thick drainage line somewhere, so I'm not sure. So I'll have a look around and see. Now, Joshua Lang, you want to know how big is a leopard's territory? So, Joshua, the young males, or males, so not necessarily young males, but the males, big dominant males, can have territories that are between 10 and 20 square kilometers. It also depends on the area that they are in. You know, some leopards in parts of Africa where the density of leopards is very low, they will have much larger territories. And there have been leopards that have been collared for research purposes, that have been monitored, and their movements, and some of them that have moved for a few hundred kilometers to move into different areas. But generally speaking, a male leopard between 10 and 20 kilometers, and a female a bit smaller than that, maybe between 5 square kilometers and 15 square kilometers. So fairly large areas, but it does depend. Also depends on the amount of competition around, how much space is there to move, are there other leopards that are encroaching on their territory. So there are a number of factors which need to be taken into account. Right, so it looks like this leopard is very, very comfy and not interested in moving just yet. So why don't we give him his space and see if we can't find the female around here, or the females. Both of them, they're possibly in the same area. So I'm going to try move out of the sighting now, and while I do that, let's head back to Jamie and get an update from her.
Now, it's wonderful news that Hosana is still in the area, but we're all keeping our fingers crossed now that he manages to find his mom or his sister once again. Silly boy, he's been out wandering, and he's taken himself a little far from mom and sister. Oh, in the meantime, we have come all the way to the western boundary of Arathusa, and we're just doing some tests on our radios, making sure everything's working out just fine. And of course, it's always nice to come through and have a look at what's happening here. we've got some very, very pregnant impala. Now, earlier on, before with the schools, we didn't go into it in too much detail, of course, because they've got such limited time spent with us. But we were on the search for shadow. Oh, big yawn. I suppose it's exhausting being that pregnant. But yes, we did go and search for shadow. I was desperate to see her. I haven't spent much time with her. What are you doing, girl? I wonder if there's not something irritating her mouth or her nose that's causing that yawning. Or maybe she's just a bit tired, feeling a bit run down. Yes, she is using the bottom teeth as a comb to comb through her fur. Now, for those of you that missed the sunrise safari, there is actually a connection between a shadow and the impala that we're looking at. Hold on a second, there is something irritating her face. She's got an abscess on her cheek, or some kind of a swelling. I don't know what. Unfortunately, I don't think she's going to let us get a closer look, but just look at the bulge close to her cheek. Sure, interesting. Right, sorry, I was talking about shadow and the fact that this morning, for those of you who missed the sunrise safari, apparently, Brian, it was a baby impala. Yeah, apparently she had a baby impala kill, and she was in a very, very dense area, sort of a tamboti thicket. So Brian led me back to where she was left this morning, and I went and I had a look. Because the last time that I saw her, I didn't actually get to spend any time with her, and unfortunately we had to leave. And I would really, really like to catch up with Shadow once again. Unfortunately, she has pulled a complete disappearing act. I have no doubt that she's somewhere hidden in that thicket, but I went for a walk. I couldn't find her. I couldn't find tracks. She's somewhere in there. The question is just, whereabout is she? Is that rain, Brian? I felt a drop, I feel. I think it's safe to say that it is indeed rain on its way. That's good news. I wonder how much it's going to come. Lovely. For our new viewers, we always rejoice at any kind of even one drop of rain, just because it's better than nothing, and we had such a bad rainy season last rainy season. So Byron, it sounds like Byron and Viam are busy putting on their rain covers, so we'll continue on for now. And then we will, as soon as we have a moment, then we will put on ours as well. Because I must say, the skies are starting to look a little heavy. And as much as I would love to check the western boundary of Arathusa, let me just check I haven't strayed into Elephant Plains, because that would be quite tragic. Yes, I was almost about to. That is rain. That is definitely rain. I think we might have to cut our explorations of the western boundary short, because the storm is coming, and I think it's time we started heading closer to home. Even the impala don't really want to be seen. They are running away from us. I'm going to keep moving, because I'm now feeling a little pressured. This wind is suddenly making me feel as though I'm about to have a repeat of the Cheetah Plains situation, where I thought it wasn't going to rain. It did. It really rained. It rained a lot. I was soaking. So was Jeandre, and we still had a very long way to get home, so we better start. Oh goodness. No, we've got to put the rain cover on, at least the camera cover. It's now actually starting to come down. Sorry? Oh, here it is. There we go. Okay, this needs to be a hurried situation. We're going to do it quickly. In the meantime, we'll send you over to Byron.
Well, while Jamie gets wet, or hopefully she doesn't get too wet out there with the rain, we are cruising along and just having a look around to see if we get any sign of the other leopards. But it is very thick in this area, and there's a lot of space for them to hide in. So I'm not sure where the female could be. Anywhere around here, perhaps. Lovely sighting. Also like to see if we can't find those elephants again, if they are around. Some Nyala to male Nyala. Oh, such beautiful antelope. Look at that long hairy coat blowing in the wind. Lovely to see the Nyala. They do prefer the thicker areas, and that's why they're walking around here. They prefer browsing off branches around these drainage lines. There's another one, there's a third one. Looks like they're just walking away from us. Nice to see them though. No females around them. And remember, those of you who watched this morning, we got to see males doing their wonderful display, that dominance display, but that's because there were probably females in the area. We actually saw the females later, but these ones, and as I said, well, today, this morning, I was telling you how you can get males in these small bachelor herds, these small bachelor groups, but and they don't mind each other. As soon as females are around, then all of a sudden they want to be dominant over the other ones and chase the other males away so they can potentially mate with the females. It's amazing how these big elephant can just disappear. We had, those weren't really massive elephant we saw earlier. They were 2 young males. But it's funny how they can. Sorry, Tormant, I was just trying to listen to your question there. What was the antelope you wanted to know that are related to Nyala? Onyx. What? I've never heard of an onyx. What is an onyx? I'd have to look that up. Is it an antelope found? Is it an antelope at least? Never heard of an onyx. Is it oryx perhaps? I don't know. We have oryx in Africa. Okay, so all right. So the oryx, yes, we do have oryx in Africa. Also known as the gemsbok, a very difficult name to pronounce, gemsbok. But no, the gemsbok are not related to the Nyala at all, other than they are another antelope species. I'll try to show all of you what the oryx looks like. We don't get them in this area. They prefer semi-arid to desert areas. That's a bird book. That's not going to help me at all. Let's have a look here. Now the oryx have got beautiful long horns. There we go. Let me show you. That's the oryx in the top. Beautiful antelope, and this I would have to say is my favorite antelope. I love them. They're just so beautiful. Those long sharp horns, and you can see this picture was taken in the Kalahari, an area where it's mostly desert to semi-arid region, very, very dry and very, very hot, and these antelope are adapted for those conditions, so we don't get them out in this area. But they are not related to the Nyala at all. Like I said, other than they are also antelope. So let's see what else we can find this afternoon. A wonderful leopard sighting. Now, James is still out in the bush wandering about, but he seems to be a little under the weather.
That is an appalling joke, Byron. Under the weather.
I thought it was funny.
You thought it was funny, did you? Well, you would, wouldn't you? Right, over here. We have a lady Marula tree, and she has produced her fruits. Now, these are quite early fruits, and so they're not going to taste very nice, I don't think. Do you like that angle, Chandra?
Yes.
But we are going to give them a little taste, just to test, because the taste of a ripe Marula is substantially better than the taste of an unripe Marula. Anyway, they will be ripe hopefully by the end of this month, going into January. Yeah, that's not going to be very good. We had an extremely poor Marula season last year, and the reason we had that poor Marula season, of course, was the lack of water. There's been a bit more water now. I'm getting quite hopeful. This one is, well, that one's rotten, so we won't be eating that.
Go on.
No, I'm not going to eat that, Chandra. I, unlike you, am not prepared to eat absolutely anything that's put in front of me. Now we're coming up onto quarantine clearings, hoping to see if there's a mammal there. I haven't shown you one mammal today on foot, but given the wind, I'm rather hoping there might be an Impala or two. That was Chandra falling in a hole, not me. But I don't see... Yes, I do. Impala. There we are, Chandra. Turn around. Way in the distance I can see some Impala, and hopefully some Impala lambs. Now, as we walk slowly towards them, and we'll see how close we can get. The wind is not good for us. I will demonstrate the wind by means of the sock that I received when I was at a wedding. There we go. The wind is blowing straight towards them. And as we walk towards them with this poor wind, let us take time, for those of you who didn't see this morning's drive, to just reminisce slightly about the morning that Chandra, Aubrey and I had today. Chandra is grinning like a Cheshire cat as we speak. This because we spent 45 minutes on foot alone with Shongile, and she came from about 30 meters away, 100 feet or so, towards us, climbed up a tree just 8 meters, that is times 3, about 25 feet from where I was sitting. She climbed up into the tree, and there she sat and she watched us for half an hour. It was a sublime connection with the heart of the wild. Did you like that, John? That was dramatic enough.
No.
No. I'll try it again later. There the Impala again. Let's walk slowly towards them. You can hear the wind, I'm sure. No rain yet. I told Chandra categorically that it was not going to rain today, just before the radio call came through that Jamie and Byron were in fact putting their rain covers on. So we've come onto quarantine because we don't have too much time left for the walk, and also we can run for home if we have to. I just want to see how close we can get to those little things. And the reason I was waffling on about Shongile was that, of course, a baby Impala is going to react in a totally different way. It's not going to want us to be anywhere near it. It's not going to show any form of inquisitiveness. It's just going to show fear. And I think they will just run away from us. Now, I'm walking straight towards the ewes and wondering if they're going to pick up our scent. I mean, they must have smelt us by now. The wind is blowing straight towards them. We'll go towards the termite mound first, and then we'll go and see if we can't get to a position where we can view these Impala. There we are, we've been spotted. Aubrey's going around this termite mound. We're going to go over the top of it. And then I'll show you a little bit about what's going on with the weather and why I don't think it's going to rain properly. I'm afraid they're kind of moving off. We'll keep trying sort of to go towards them, but if we look down over there, there is the way the weather is coming from. That is southeast. And I think that's looking quite bright, so I don't think it's going to rain on us. Chandra would like to disagree. Now, James Richard, apparently it is today the World Soil Day. How you know that, I could not begin to tell you. But anyway, well done for knowing it. And you say, you'd like an interesting fact about the soil? Well, about this soil that we're sitting on here, I can tell you that it is granite based, and that means that it is very sandy, it is fairly nutrient free, and of course because of this nutrient free soil, it's one of the major reasons that this area has been declared a wildlife area, because you cannot do agriculture here. People have tried. They've run cattle on this land, they have tried to plant crops on this land, they've tried to dig beneath the surface to find gold, none of which has resulted in any kind of sort of economic economic activity, and that's why it was given over to wildlife. Little did they know it would become some of the most valuable real estate in South Africa, and of course ultimately that is down to the fact that it is a nutrient-poor, granite-based sandy soil. There you are, James Richard. That is your number of soil facts for today. I'm going to try and get a little bit closer to these impalas. I was expecting a great swathe of mammal life up here, but unfortunately there are none. There they're starting to run, Jandri. All heading down towards the pan, where they might have a bit of a drink, probably just a graze, without the smell of predatory humans on their noses. Okay, Byron is still knocking about the place. I'm sure he's got his rain covers on now. We're going to probably head pretty close to home. Might see you once more, but until then, see what Byron has to tell you from his under-the-weatherness.
So I am trying to tempt fate a little bit. I'm not putting rain covers on just yet. I think it might miss us. Let's see. I'm not sure. But who knows? Who knows? I'm living life on the edge, not putting rain covers on just yet. What a rebel. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I was just saying it is such a wonderful afternoon because it's so much cooler than yesterday. I think I did fry a little bit. I was cooking slowly in this vehicle. I think I was just on simmer. It was very, very hot yesterday afternoon. But it's changed now, and this cool weather, overcast weather is fantastic and definitely very, very welcome. Just have a look, scanning these areas for potentially those elephants. So while we drive through this area, or you can scan with us and have a look at the wonderful landscape. And you can also get a look at those clouds. I mean, those clouds are amazing. And have a look from where you are now, and Viam will try his best while I drive just to show you a little bit of the area to our left, because the clouds are much, much darker in that direction, that area. Now, what I'm going to try to do is just stop around here and listen out for those elephants for a section, or for a short little while. But actually, have a look here. This is wonderful. I wonder if you can see it. So off to our left now, you can actually see the Drakensberg mountain range in the distance, just below that cloud cover. And it's a little clear, and I think because of the rain often makes the air so much clearer that we can see that mountain range very clearly. And the other morning it looked like that mountain range had almost moved closer to us, it was so clear. It's a bit hazy there at the moment, and I wonder if there isn't a bit of rain in front of those clouds, in front of those mountains. There's a beautiful mountain range. And that area that we are looking at now is known as the Blyde River Canyon. Now, an interesting fact, and that is the third largest canyon in the world. So the largest canyon, obviously the Grand Canyon in the United States, and then it is the Fish River Canyon, which is also in southern Africa, up in Namibia, and then it is the Blyde River Canyon, this one, which is up in the northeastern part of South Africa. The third largest canyon in the world. However, it is the greenest, so it has the most vegetation, it has the most water flowing through there. So it is a beautiful, beautiful area, and I've been fortunate enough to actually take guests on helicopter through that area and view the canyon from helicopter. It really, really is incredible. What a wonderful view. And I can't hear any elephant, but it's also, now that I think about it, it's become very, very windy. So I'm not sure. We are going to hear them if they are moving around. Maybe if we look in this area over here, I thought I saw a cuckoo flying through here. I may be wrong. Let's just scan and have a look. Sometimes you get a fleeting glimpse of one that might fly from tree to tree. Let's just keep a good look out here. Seems to have flown off. I don't see it at all anymore, and so that's typical cuckoo behavior. Very, very quick glimpse of it and it moves off. That's why when we do see these cuckoos, it's wonderful to see them. I'm approaching our northern boundary at the moment, our Buffelshoek cut line. And I might end up driving past Buffelshoek Dam just to have a look if there's any activity around there. And you can see why they call it a cut line, a very, very straight road. Alright, now I'm going to head towards the dam. While I do that, let's head back to James and get an update from him.
I found something quite interesting here, everybody, and I thought, gosh, that's a very unusual stone to find over here. I wonder how it got here. And then Aubrey said, well, it's probably come from some of the building at the camps. It's a beautiful white stone, and we'll take it home with us because actually I suppose it must be some, it must be some form of litter. Right, let's put it in our pockets. Okay, then over here we've got a baboon spider, the tarantula, and we're not going to pull him out of his hole here. We're going to leave him be exactly where he is, but just to tell you that this one is about 1 inch and a bit across, and so the baboon spider itself is probably nearly the size of my palm, so a fairly enormous fellow. Now it's getting quite dark, you can see, and that means of course that many of the flowers and things that are around here normally, which would be open, have stopped being open. They've all closed up for the night. One of them being this gorgeous thing here, and this to me looks like the, I wonder what this is actually. I don't know what this is. It looks like the beginnings to me of a wild sesame. I think that's what it's going to be. You can see here it's going to have a beautiful kind of pinkish orange flower. There we go, and I think it'll eventually be about that tall, probably about 2.5 feet off the ground. Alrighty, let us continue. See what else we can find here in this blustery this I don't mean to giggle at your question, but it's actually a really good one, because I think both Jean-Andre and I would love to go and acquiesce to your request. You say, could you send one of the team over to the Drakensberg Mountains, which are about 100 kilometers that way? Jean-Andre's hat's come off again. About 100 kilometers that way. Liz, the answer is no. We couldn't really do it physically because we wouldn't be able to get a signal from the camera into the backpack, out of the aerial, to one of our repeaters here on Djuma, and then out to where you are. So it would just be too far away, I'm afraid. But it would be very, very special to go and do a walk in the Drakensberg. And maybe one day when the 3G signal is strong enough, we'd be able to do it that way. A bit like we did a little bit of Facebook Live this morning with Shongile. That might be possible one day. I still don't think that the cell phone signal is strong enough in that area at the moment, though Jean-Andre is agreeing with me by shaking his dreadlocked head. Right, let's get his hat and continue. You clearly are not able to look after this, Jean-Andre, so I'm going to look after it for you. Brian, you're interested in why those spiders are called baboon spiders and wondering, is it because they have a propensity to eat baboons? Brian, the answer is negative. They do not have a propensity to eat baboons. It's because they're hairy, like a baboon, and the color is very similar to that of a baboon. I'm wondering if you are asking that question tongue-in-cheek, Brian. I mean, a baboon will definitely eat a baboon spider. Without question, baboons love spiders. They enjoy eating them. So a baboon may well dig a spider out of its burrow, but it's highly unlikely that the baboon spider would ever eat the baboon back. In fact, I think it's impossible. Now, also around here, everyone, is a sort of nesting colony of dwarf mongoose. And I've seen them in termite mounds, all of these termite mounds here, all over quarantine clearings. But by this time of the day, I think they've probably all disappeared down into their burrows, where they're warming themselves as this blustery night starts to fall around us. Let's continue just over to the edge of the clearings here and see what we can see here. That's a very, very good question, DD Star, as I've spotted some more Impala just over there. DD Star, you say, what happens if it rains? What happens to those baboon spiders? Does the water just flow down into the tunnel? How do they get it out? DD Star, I think you'll find that they are sufficiently narrow and hopefully not on sort of any stream where there might be a flow of water. So yes, some water would probably get in. I think it would be absorbed by the burrow underneath, and certainly that silken cover that we showed you would go some way to protecting the burrow from the water. Let's go and see if we can see a little bit more over the top here. I was hoping maybe there would be a wildebeest or a zebra or two, but I don't know where they've all gone. It's so nice to have these on-foot interactions with animals. We haven't seen a great number of animals today at all, actually, on walk, but that's not surprising given the amount of wind that there is. Yeah, Jason Jones, as I'm trying to spot a... There it goes. Oh, there's no ways we're going to get that. Did you see it, Andre? What? Woodland kingfisher gone at 100 miles an hour. Got it. You got it there. Oh, well done. Jason, you want to know how fast the wind is blowing?
Too fast to hold a steady shot.
Too fast to hold a steady shot, says Jandre. That's not surprising. I would say at its top gusting speed, it's probably hitting about 50 kilometers an hour, maybe, which is not very strong for the kind of place that Jandre comes from, but it is quite strong for here. Right, let's head across to Jamie. She's got some signal and a striped antelope.
Well, I have to confess, I've never been very good at the whole wind speed concept, the knots and describing it that way. I can tell you that it is very windy. You'll also be very happy to hear that we have finally managed to find some signal. We've been checking out the western fringes of Arathusa, and unfortunately we disappeared for a long time. But the good news is we are back once again with a magical disappearing male in Nyala, who has now vanished behind the trees. A little bit earlier, he was actually sparring with another young male. Unfortunately, with this wind speed, with it blowing in the way that it is, all of the animals are far more skittish than they might otherwise be. And so even just the action of us pulling up near them, they stopped playing and they started moving off almost immediately. And I heard, off to my right, there was the sound of Impala fighting as well. But I have a feeling that it's just one of those afternoons. It is definitely one of those afternoons. Would you please go into reverse, Rusty? Here we go. Hannes, you want to know if there is a folklore story. I'm trying to get this lovely Nyala Bull on camera, but he's also being a little uncooperative. If there is any kind of a folklore story about why the Nyala has tan socks. He's being very... Oh, now we're all running. Now there's mass panic, and we're all running away. Impala dashing off. I think that's being caused by the rutting males, the males that think for some reason they're going to have a chance to mate, which definitely isn't going to be the case. And there they all have gathered. See how skittish and spooked they are. Sorry, you were asking about whether or not there are any local legends behind or reasons behind the Nyala's tan socks. Not that I'm aware of. I've never heard of one. Of course, this is something that many of our viewers have heard before and that I've often mentioned before. But my favorite local story, and I'm not quite sure where local is, I'm not quite sure exactly where the story came from, but I do know that it was shared with me by a viewer called Teresa, who shared the story of why the Nyala and the bushbuck and the kudu have the white stripes and spots on them. And that was the legend, so the legend goes. They're being very inconvenient here, Brian. They keep just moving out of reach. Let's try go forward a little bit, that might help. And then we can actually look at the animal. Oh, there we go. So there you go, see the white chevron across the face, and then the drips of white along the back and down the sides, and then the dots. So Teresa told me that there was a local legend that sort of went along the lines that the Nyala and the kudu their legs were so thin that it couldn't quite support their weight when they were first created. So the creator reached down and lifted them up, and wherever the creator's hands touched the body of the antelope, it left behind these white markings like handprints, which I think is an absolutely beautiful story. I'd love to know exactly where it came from, because I'm not 100% sure. But it is one of those stories that has stuck with me ever since. Just because, particularly with the dots on the Nyala. Oh. And back we go. See what I mean? There is much panic here at the moment. Everything is so afraid of what is trying to sneak up on them, even if there isn't anything. Just the simple fact that the wind is howling and the bush is constantly rustling, they can't possibly be expected to know what is a leopard and what is just a leaf blowing. So there you go. That, I'm afraid, is the only local story I know about Nyala colouring. I don't know if there are any reasons behind the tan stockings. I'm sure we could make one up, though. I'm sure we could make up a Just So story equivalent of why the Nyala have stockings, or male Nyala have stockings. I'm sure, because the Just So stories always seem to be linked by some sort of vanity in the animals. And I mean, when Hippo was hairy, just because he was vain that he lost all of the hair on him, and that which was the other? The warthog was also very vain in some of the local legends. So perhaps there is a story as to why the Nyala ended up with stockings stuck on its legs that might include some kind of sense of vanity. I'm sure we could think of one if we put our minds to it. But I don't know of any local legends that I always feel as though, especially with kudu, that white strip along the back looks as though somebody has run wet paint down their back, and the stripes along the sides are where it's dripped down over their sides. They are beautiful, though. And those stockings really are very elegant. Perhaps there was a time that Nyala got stuck in mud, or something like that. I can't think of a Just So story. It's harder than it looks, now that I think of it. I can't seem to make one up off the top of my head. Right, what were you two running from? Just a noise. I'm pretty sure it was just a noise. Okay. Right, let us carry on. Do a quick circuit around the Arathusa airstrip. Maybe Shadow's popped out there. It is one of her favourite places, after all, or has been one of her favourite places. And we might see if we can find her. But while we do, and we head off and the wind is howling, it's definitely time for the bushwalk team to be indoors and safe. So let's head over to them so that they can say farewell.
And for our final segment, everybody, the beautiful ring-necked dove, which is calling. Can you see it there? Beautiful. Sorry, it's a little bit wobbly. It is quite windy, of course. Right, let's zoom out and say our final farewells. I just need to push a button quickly. No, wrong button. There we go. Now, you'll notice that I have changed completely.
Hello.
There we are. That is what Genre looks like. So when I talk about his dreadlocks, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
very nice. There is his aerial. There we are. There's the entirety of Genre, and of course his most spectacular feature being these Absolutely astounding looking pieces of meat there. Isn't that amazing? Quite astounding. Alright everybody, that is going to be it from the bushwalk today. Bye bye. Thank you for coming on the walk today. I had a marvellous time. We didn't find a great number of mammals, but we did see some very interesting things, including the dastardly act of probably some pugnacious ants killing termites. Until tomorrow morning, stay safe and happy wherever you are in the world and enjoy the rest of the sunset safari. Bye bye.
Now, I've arrived at Buffelshoek Dam while James has finished his walk, and there appears to be nothing. No animals have come down to drink from what I've seen, or what I can see, and even the birds seem to have disappeared somewhat. And I think it's because, and you can see the ripples on the water, it is very, very windy. The wind has definitely picked up quite a lot. So I think what's happened is a lot of birds and animals are probably hiding in the thickets to try to stay out of the wind. But what I'm going to do is continue. So stick with us and let's see what else we can find while we drive around. Who knows, maybe we bump into some lions walking along the road. You never know. Or some people driving past. We'll just move out the way here quickly. Good afternoon everyone. How are you? How's it going? Good, good. Enjoy. See you later. Bye bye. Some other people, some landowners it appears that are out on safari enjoying the afternoon. It's so great, and I always say it, but I do enjoy seeing other people out here and seeing how they're enjoying it and what they're seeing and chatting to them. They also had a plan of heading to Buffelshoek Dam, but I think they're going to be a little disappointed because there was nothing there. So I hope that the rest of you are enjoying your day wherever you are around the world. And if you are watching from your office, that's okay. We condone that. We don't mind it. And it might be therapeutic actually watching safari while you're working away in an office, sitting on your computers. I know some of my guests do it. I won't mention any names in case they get into trouble. But I know some of my guests, especially from the United States, end up sitting, and every now and then they might have two computers, one watching Safari Live and one busy doing work, which is great. I think that's awesome. Squeaky brakes, sorry, but have a look here. We have a Kudu. It's just a female Kudu, and she's potentially trying to stay out of the wind and move into some thicker bush. I don't see any others. I know I do. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 moving through. There's a young male with those small horns and some females. Now, what what the kudu generally do is they do prefer moving through thicker bush because they are browsers, which means they feed off leaves of trees, and they generally prefer this type of habitat. But I was saying earlier to VM that with this wind that we're having at the moment, and you can see these trees blowing in the wind behind me, it makes it very difficult for a lot of these animals to rely on their senses, their sense of hearing and their sense of smell especially. So what they try and do is a lot of them try and move in through thickets to try and get out of the wind a little bit more, because when they are exposed and it's windy, it makes it harder to hear potential predators coming. And the kudu do enjoy these areas and they do prefer moving through thickets. So that's possibly why we're not seeing too much at the moment, is a lot of animals maybe moving into the thickets, try and look for shelter from the wind, you could call it. But the kudu do prefer it. And if you have a look, that female watching us, she's got her ears pricked up and focused on us because they've got incredible sense of hearing, and those big ears are what they rely on a lot to pick up on any predators. And she's learning about other animals and how the wind affects them now while I'm speaking, clearly. But anyway, let's leave them and continue and see what else we can find. Nice to see female kudu. That's a nice size herd. They're generally in small herds like that, not much larger, and usually the young kudu will stay with them. That's why that young male was with them. The older males tend to move off on their own quite a lot, just like most animal species. Males stick with females for a period of time, and usually when they're looking to mate, and then they move off and they'll form bachelor herds and move around together. And pretty soon, because of this cloud cover, it's probably going to get a lot darker a lot sooner. So we will be able to use the spotlight a lot sooner, and then hopefully try and find something interesting. Maybe an owl or a chameleon or a scorpion. That would be great. I haven't seen those little creatures for quite some time on drive. Going through a bit of a drainage line now, so we might find little owls, but while I search this area carefully, let's head back to Jamie, who's still on Arathusa.
We have completed the final area of our tests, which is right along the Arathusa airstrip, and let me tell you something, it's a little windy here. And we were driving the opposite direction a moment ago, and as you can see, my dashboard cover has been completely, I've just given up now, it can stay there for now. It's not raining at all, so I don't have to worry about protecting the electronics that are on the dashboard or just below the dashboard. But this wind is intense at the moment. Took my hat off at one point, but that's okay. We have finished off, and since it is very quiet this afternoon, I feel as though Byron and I have swapped places. Yesterday afternoon we had the amazing leopard sighting, and poor Byron was struggling for animals. This afternoon it's our turn. Oh, whoops, we're going off the road. Sorry, every time I try and talk, it feels as though the wind is blowing the air out of my mouth, blowing the sound out of it. You holding on there, Brian? I don't know if he said yes or not. He might have fallen off at the back, I'm not sure. We just have to keep going. Okay. Go away. Go away. Stay. It's okay, everybody. Brian's still on the back. He's alive and well. We nearly blew away. Okay. That's a little bit calmer now. We're off the open area and we've got a little bit of shelter. I always imagine in weather like this what it must be like being a bird. Not well, definitely, I suppose the big ones and the little ones, to be, when you're trying to fly, being gusted about all over the place, because of course birds are such light little creatures. Even the big ones, compared to mammals, are relatively light. And it must be a very scary, perhaps it's fun though. I can't decide if it would be scary or if it would be fun to be sort of buffeted about by the wind. I always think about birds in weather like this. And this isn't even that serious. It never gets to gale force winds here in the Sabi Sand. But for those of you that perhaps come from very windy areas, and I'm not talking about extreme weather, I'm not talking about hurricanes or tornadoes or situations like that, because of course, as we know, birds and other animals are very, very good at anticipating those sorts of events and generally getting out of the area or getting to a sheltered area as soon as possible. I just mean your normal everyday gusty weather. I find it quite extraordinary that they manage to ride those air currents, especially for those birds that migrate, or perhaps those birds out at sea that have to weather those storms and never land, like albatrosses. It is a truly phenomenal ability. Well, it seems as though the rain has held off. After all of that, after the mad rush to put our rain covers on, we got about 5 drops of rain, and then it stopped. So the rain has held off. Date for you all. Those of you who are wondering where on earth our beloved Nkuhumas have gone, they are on Simbambili, which is a property to the north and the west of Djuma. So on the other side, or the northern side of Arathusa, they're sitting there at Simbambili Dam. So the Nkuhuma pride are alive and well. They are just not within our traverse area, so unfortunately we can't go and find them. But we can go and make one last-ditched attempt at finding Shadow. Just bear with me, sorry, something blew when we were on the airstrip, something blew into my eye. And while we talk about our lions and our leopards, a very warm welcome to Lily. I say warm welcome, it's actually a bit nippy, but my welcome is warm. Lily, you wanted to know, do the territories of leopards and lions overlap, or will they stay away from each other? Their territories do overlap, because there's simply not enough space and there's too many leopards and lions, and they're also not in reproductive competition with each other. So there's no way that you could have lion territory here and then leopard territory here and then another lion territory here. I shall stop. How's my signal, Rebecca? Right. So as long as I don't move, which is wonderful because the landscape in front of us is positively teeming with animals. So we don't have leopard territory, then a lion territory. Then it doesn't work like that. So what will happen is you'll get lion, and then lion, and then lion territories, but within that you'll have leopards and leopards and leopards in their own territories, and there's no correlation between their boundaries or anything like that. However, will they stay out of each other's way? Yes, absolutely. Particularly where, well, actually that's not 100% true, because sometimes leopards get curious, particularly when there's a lion kill or when there's lions in the area. You'll very often find and sneaking around the edges is a leopard that's come to see what's going on. They're quite curious creatures. So they come in, they've got this look, they get this upright posture, because they know they're faster than lions, so they know that they can dash around, they know that they can dash away, as long as they've got enough distance between them. However, lions do kill leopards, and they will kill leopards if they can catch them. So yes, they will. Lions aren't bothered by leopards, but leopards will try and stay out of the way of lions for the most part. Particularly lions, it's going to sound ridiculous, lions they can't see. What I mean by that is the biggest danger to leopards is lions creeping up on them, because their territories do overlap. There's no separate territories for them. And also bear in mind that a territory is a very fluid thing. Lions' territories, there might be one pride here and one pride here, and one pride might be all the way on this side of their territory, which means that this pride might slightly overlap into their territory for a while. and then move off and come back, and these lines will come back. And particularly with prides rather than with males. Males tend to be a great deal more aggressive, but females generally, they roar, which is kind of their way of saying, hey, we're here, just stay away from us. And the other prides do the same, and everybody kind of knows where you stand in those situations, so they can stay away and not compete with each other. Can I move, Bex? Or is it a risk? I can move, however, on the condition that I send you across to Byron. So without any further ado, off you go, and I'll try and move.
Now, we have not seen anything yet. Saw one Impala dart off, but
oh dear, it seems as though there's been an attack of the gremlins, and unfortunately Byron lost his own signal, and so luckily we seem to have ours, so we'll carry on towards Djuma. And the good news is, I think that we're safe from here on out. I think our signal should be absolutely fine. From what I've experienced and from what I know of Rusty, the vehicle that we're on, she's reliable in this area, so we should be okay. Now, Shadow, where have you gone? This morning, she was on a baby Impala kill. I searched for that as well, and it looks as though either she's moved it or it's finished. I couldn't find any remnants of it, but a baby Impala, a leopard is going to finish in no time. An adult leopard is going to finish in no time. So what I'm going to try and do, I think, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to try and do. I'm not going to go in where Brent went in, because I've tried that already this afternoon. She wasn't there, and I walked all around that area. So I'm trying to think if I want to take a risk, which direction I want to try and take a risk from, and just pop my nose in, just to see if we get lucky. I don't know. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. From the north or to the south. I think I'm going to try to the south. I think I'm going to see whether or not she's popped out on one of the termite mounds there. This area that she's in used to be, probably has always been, we just might not have found her as often recently, but it used to be one of Shadow's favourite spots when Sindile was still a cub. So Sindile is her adult male cub. Not an adult male cub, he was her cub, he's now an adult male. He's fully grown and he's independent, with quite a long and quite a complicated backstory. But when he was a cub a year and a half ago, we used to find them very regularly in this area. And I'll never forget, I was so upset. I wasn't upset, I was just slightly jealous of the time that I found a drag mark in here. And I walked for a little bit, but I didn't have any luck, and then I had to come back to the vehicle, so because we can't obviously disappear off the vehicles for too long. And was Brent on tracking team? He must have been. Brent was on tracking team, and he'd taken Brian with him, and they went for a walk, and Shadow happened to be probably about 10 meters away from where I stopped looking, but she gave you a rev, didn't she, Brian? Her and Sindile, both of them. What I mean by that is that Brent and Brian got charged by both leopards, not just Shadow, apparently. I always thought it was just Shadow, but apparently it was both of them that came and growled at them. And did they do the stiff-legged thing, or was it just growling? Growl and move off. That feels like a very, very long time ago. Okay, Shadow. The other big problem is, let's go in here. This is in line with where she was, just on the other side of the river system. Okay, see if I can't find us an easy-ish way in, but this could get a little bit complicated. Okay. Sorry, let me just think about this for 1 second. I'm just going to try and figure out, I should have done this with a bit more light, but because of the clouds, it's actually got very dark very quickly. This is also an area where we've very frequently found shadow mating with Tingana. Wait, that's not true. We have in the past, I wouldn't say very frequently, but we have in the past, on more than one occasion, found shadow mating with Tingana. So I should, in theory, remember the easy ways in here, but unfortunately, my memory hasn't been as obliging. Watch, heads. You okay there, Brian? Right, I marked the GPS position on my phone so that I'd be able to approach from the other side and pop out roughly exactly where she was. Here's a nice little track here. I think I've accidentally stumbled upon the road. Well, not a road, an area where people have made their way in. No, don't be silly. Yep, this is exactly right. Okay. Sorry everybody, we're going to squeeze through here. It's not too bad. And just keep your eyes peeled because she could be anywhere here. I'm hoping. Stranger things have happened on these live drives. I've just driven over some wild aniseed. The smell, the air is suddenly filled with the smell of licorice. Oof, in this weather, she could be anywhere. Jackie J, you have indeed heard correctly that Hosa means chief, and that when Hosana, Karula's son, gets larger, his name will change to Hosa, which means chief, rather than his current name, which means little chief. And you are absolutely correct. That will hopefully happen, because obviously you can't call a big male leopard, a big scary male leopard, little chief, can you? It doesn't quite work. So that was always the idea, was that he'd have an affectionate diminutive when he was little, and then as he grows older and more awe-inspiring, hopefully we will be able to call him not Hosana, but Hosa, the big chief. Bear in mind, of course, that might not work in practice, because he could disperse outside, as we've seen with Kunuma, and the lodges that will regularly see him might not go by that particular title. Right, well, I'm scouring this area with my spotlight and hoping that Shadow might just pop out of the shadows, quite literally. It seems as though Byron is all set for the fall of evening as well.
I've got a spotlight and I'm casting a shadow, Jamie. That's about it for shadow for me. But no sign of any animals just yet. I don't know. I think we're going to struggle in the wind this evening. But let's see. Just scan. Where are all these chameleons hiding? Wouldn't it be great to see a honey badger coming out, running around now? That would honestly make my day, or make my year. I've not seen a honey badger for ages. So that's what I'm looking for. While Jamie is looking for a leopard, I'm going to look for a honey badger. Sure, very, very windy. And Rebecca is giving me an update on what I've just said. Thank you, Rebecca. Shame, I think sometimes the ladies Where did that go? I lost my microphone there, sorry. See what happens with these very windy conditions. But luckily I have wired it to my person, connected to our battery pack. See what happens when it's quiet. We speak about everything else bar the animals because we can't find them. So as I was saying, the ladies in the FC have got a few different radios that they need to speak into. Occasionally they pick up the one that was meant for the other person and they give us updates, but we are very thankful for having them around and give us all the questions. So very important role. The voices in my head, as I like to call them. So I'm not completely crazy, there are voices in my head. Sure, this is not looking good. I haven't even seen an Impala or two running around, and I'm sure those females are all very nervous in this weather because this is good hunting weather for predators. They will be able to sneak up and approach their prey a lot easier because it is so windy. It's noisy, and it would probably also cause their scent to disappear a lot quicker because of the wind. So ideal hunting conditions for predators. I wouldn't be surprised if we find a few carcasses around tomorrow with predators on them, maybe leopards, lions, who knows. What was that? Thought I saw some lightning in the distance, but I think I'm seeing things. Last night we had a lot of lightning around. It was wonderful to see in the distance. Some birds calling some starlings. Wolfguy and Wolfgirl would like to know, what sea animal would I like to see? Sea animal. I'd love to see a whale shark. I think a whale shark, a orca, and a great white. And those three I would love to see. Alright, there's some Impala ahead. I'm just going to turn the spotlight off a little bit because we know their eyes are sensitive at night. See, they are all in the clearing. And there's some, I can see little lambs darting off. So yeah, I think a whale shark, they look amazing, very interesting animals. A orca, I think they're beautiful, I think they're incredible predators. And then a great white. Now we've got some of the best great white viewing in South Africa, or in the world. I think Australia also have good great white viewing. But in the Cape, down in Cape Town, the great white viewing is really, really incredible down there. And a lot of tourists go there specifically for that. So maybe I should try and make a holiday of it and go and try and see some sharks down there. And I must admit, and this is a secret, I'm not a fan of scuba diving, and I'll get a bit claustrophobic, I think, and also being under the ocean, I'm not comfortable with that. I'll happily walk through this entire area unarmed, by myself, completely comfortable. I don't mind that, but don't put me under the ocean. That's it's funny, but I'm just not comfortable with that. But I'm happy to swim in the sea and jump off a boat and what. But going underneath, not a fan. What little bird is that? Is it a little Franklin? Is it? Oh, it's a little crested Franklin. It just looked a little different in its behavior, but I think maybe the light disturbed it. There we go, it's moved off to the side. Alright, I'm going to continue searching these areas for little creatures, nocturnal creatures, and let's head back to Jamie for an update.
I'm also thinking about searching for little creatures, and one creature in particular, which is the lesser galago, or the bush baby. And somewhere on this road, since I haven't had any success with Shadow, I'm hoping that our bush babies will be in one of their favorite nest sites. It's impossible to predict, of course, because bush babies will often go and sleep in different places day to day. So it's not as though they return to exactly the same spot every single night. But we have found a few of their bush baby holes, and I'm hoping perhaps tonight, since I haven't had much luck otherwise, I'm hoping that tonight they might be home. Byron told me something amazing, which I am astounded by, because in the entire year and a half I have never ever heard them. But Byron tells me he saw a greater bush baby at a lodge called Voyatella. And sorry, let me go. There we go. Hello? Anybody home? I'll get into why that's so amazing in a moment, and what those animals are in a second. Let's just see if anybody's home. Hello? It happened once, and every time now I go and I check this bush baby hole. No, it didn't happen once, it happened twice, where the bush baby all of a sudden stuck its head out, and it was the most adorable thing and well-timed thing in the world. But I think it was a little bit hopeful of me. From what I can see from the holes in the... Oh, hold on, he's coming. What the heck? I'm so sorry, little squirrel. Brian, that wins. That does win. The sequel to the bush baby face poking out in the form of a little squirrel. Oh, I love this job. He never fails to keep one thoroughly entertained and thoroughly on your toes. Alright, little squirrel, I'm sorry, let me take my spotlight off you. I'm not too worried because they are okay with lights and I'm not shining directly on it, and it will go straight back into its hole, so it's not that it's going to be wandering about in the evening time. But I'm going to take my spotlight off it now. But that was utterly hilarious. Bye. Good night. Good night. Yes. Oh well. He's still watching us. It's too funny. It's very hard for you to see because it's so dark, and I don't want to keep the spotlight on him because he is a diurnal animal. But that is utterly hilarious. He's still sitting there with his head poking out of the hole. What you doing? Let's just take one last look. I know it's very difficult. The light is very, very dark. What you guys doing? That was too funny. That was so unexpected. Didn't this happen to Brent recently? Was it Brent? It was somebody, but I'm sure I remember Rebecca telling me Brent's checking for bush babies. He's found a bush baby. No, it's a squirrel. I'm sure that's just happened recently. Well, it's just happened to me now. Rebecca says mine is better, and it wasn't the same hole. That was so cute. I really do love moments like that. They certainly keep us guessing, don't they, Brian? Cute man. Alright, little squirrel. Bye. And Daniel, it's gone to bed. Daniel, he wants to know if it's normal for squirrels to be in bush baby holes. Yes, it is. It's very normal for the two of them to use each other's nesting sites. Generally, a bush baby group, because they do sleep in groups, they sleep in not necessarily family groups, they can be unrelated to each other, but they will sleep in groups together. They won't necessarily go into a roof, for example, that's been inhabited by squirrels, that's perhaps full of squirrel droppings and bits of food and bits of cuttings from whatever the squirrels made their nests out of. But it is common to see, particularly with holes in trees, they get utilized by all sorts of things. That could just as easily have been a bird. It could just as easily have been a crested barbet or one of the nesting birds that live in the hollows in trees. So it's particularly common with squirrels and bush babies. Squirrels, of course, are not in any way related to bush babies. Bush babies are primates. They're miniature primates. And I was telling you, before I got the surprise of today, I was telling you about what Byron saw, which was the thick-tailed or the greater galago. That's a bush baby this size. Not quite. Let's not exaggerate, Jamie. This big. They're a really very big bush baby, and I did not, for 1 second, think that there were any on Djuma. If you'd asked me, I would have said no, probably not, because I've never heard them, and they are the ones that really truly scream like babies. That's where the name bush baby comes from. I have never heard one, and yet there's been one living at WildEarthTV Lodge the entire time. Who knew? And now, James, you wanted to know, speaking of greater bush babies, how the diet of the greater galago differs from the lesser galago. One of the big things is greater galagos, the big ones, are not as dependent upon tree sap as the lesser galagos, and they'll actually go for slightly larger insects and things that they can find. So being that much bigger, obviously, they need to eat bigger food, and they can't sustain themselves in the same way that little lesser galagos can on tree sap and on moths and so on that they catch. So the one big difference is that you hardly ever see little bush babies or lesser galagos on the ground. That you do, but it's really only when they're hopping from tree to tree and they just have to cross a road or something. Whereas thick-tailed bush babies spend quite a lot of time on the ground. It's only really that they go to roosting trees. Other than that, they spend a lot of time foraging on the ground, and that's because they're not after sap, they're not really after moths, but they're after beetles and things that are slightly more substantial than what the lesser galago might be after. I still can't believe that squirrel. It really did make me chuckle. Oh, Truth Ann. You want to know if bush babies can be kept as pets? Yes, they can. They shouldn't be. I have very strong feelings about keeping wild animals as pets. It always upsets me a little bit to see a wild animal kept as a pet in that sort of environment. I struggle with it. We have cats and dogs and horses, and we've got a variety of domestic animals that have become dependent on us through centuries and generations of breeding. And I feel like a lot of the time wild animals that are kept as pets in a lot of contexts are done so almost as a status symbol. In fact, it's exactly what they are. They're a status symbol. I'm very cool. Look at my unusual pet. I've got a serval, for example. However, bush babies fall out of thatching all of the time when they're little, at which point their death would be almost inevitable. And yes, I know a few people who have had bush babies as pets. They are utterly adorable. They are also little alcoholics. So you'll have guests all sitting at a bar or with their drinks in front of them at the dinner table, and particularly with whiskies. These little bush babies love them, and they'll fly out of nowhere, jump onto the table and try and get to the whiskey. And if they are not allowed to do so, they get very angry. And also bear in mind, of course, that the way in which bush babies function, both males and females, in terms of marking their pathways through the trees, is they'll stop and they'll sit down and they'll reach down and urinate a drop or two on their feet and then on their hands, and they rub it together, and then they rub the soles of their feet with it, and then off they go for the night. So every time your bush baby jumps on you, it's with pee-covered hands and feet. If you are able to cope with that, and if they are rescued for the right reasons, they're adorable. They are, I have to confess. There's nothing, because a lot of them, once they've been raised by people, they live wild and they go off and they do their own thing, and then they come back and visit. And there's nothing like this little thing perched looking at you with those massive eyes on your shoulder. But yes, it's not something we encourage and not something we agree with in general. The possibility of keeping wild animals as pets. I have no doubt that Byron knows a few people with pet bush babies or bush babies that they've raised. Let's head over to him so we can find out if he does.
Jamie, I don't actually know anyone who has or who keeps bush babies as pets. So here's a funny story. My uncle is a farmer down in the Eastern Cape, so down the southeastern part of South Africa. A very, very large farm down there, and he farms with cattle and sheep and Angora goats. Now, in that area there's a lot of wildlife, and he's got 3 kids, and these kids living and growing up on the farm, and I used to spend a lot of time there too. You always bump into little creatures and abandoned little creatures, and then they would keep them as pets. And when he was younger, he told me he had a bush baby, but so he did have bush babies running around the house, apparently 1 or 2. But the thing is, the bush babies are quite dirty and they urinate on their hands, and that's how they mark their territory. So they do begin to smell, and it's not ideal having bush babies around. They are incredibly cute, but I think the smell gets a bit much. But he's had all kinds of creatures. I think they had suricats or meerkats, also known as meerkats. He did have some of those at one stage. Ground squirrels, he had some of those, and all of those little animals we don't actually get out here because the landscape and terrain and climate is very different. They prefer the semi-arid to desert areas. So you had some of those. What else did they have? At one stage they had a warthog that they found, that they kept around. Don't know what happened to the warthog. But all these weird and wonderful creatures that he would find driving around the farm, and then bring it back home and give it to the kids and say, here we go, we're going to look after it or not. So, and it's usually not ideal, but if it's abandoned, we pick it up along the side of the road. And you can imagine, and the thing is, a lot of farmers and that within Africa, or southern Africa especially, in the old days, they never really knew any better. They didn't know about conservation. They didn't know that you could potentially harm the animal more by trying to take them and look after them, and that usually it ends in heartache, because people grow attached to it, and they're still wild animals. They end up leaving, or they end up being killed by something else. So it's very tough, but farmers never really knew any better. So they would think they were doing a good deed, but generally you shouldn't try and save wildlife or look after them if you find them in the wild, or pick up anything. Try to keep it as a pet rather, because you can potentially do a bit more harm than good. I mean, obviously abandoned animals that are endangered, and people try and have research projects and try and look after animals that have been potentially wounded and injured because of people, that's a different story. That, I think it's our duty to look after them and try to save them. Excuse me. So it appears as if the wind has chased everything away. Now, Debbie, I wonder, I'm not too sure. You wanted to know if bats are able to hunt in this wind. Shoo, Debbie, I think it would be quite difficult for them. I'm sure they would, though. Bats are incredibly agile, and I do think they do have to fly around and hunt even in this wind, and they do indeed, Debbie, because I just saw 2 bats fly overhead. So yes, they do. That just answers the question. However, the thing is, in this wind, you probably don't get as many insects flying around, and that's generally what a lot of the bats will feed on. So it might make it a bit harder for them to hunt because there's just not a lot of food around. But they do fly around, and as I was saying, they're very agile and they are able to fly in weather like this, and 2 of them just flew over us. So yes, bats can definitely hunt and fly in this wind. That was easy. That was a great question, Debbie. Thank you. It's always nice when things pop out when you're speaking about it. But anyway, some Impala. I'm going to turn my spotlight off, and on that note, I'm going to say farewell. Thank you, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed this afternoon with us and evening. From myself and from VM on camera with me, hope you've enjoyed it, and let's head back to Jamie. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.
I thought I saw a chameleon, but it was a false alarm, and it doesn't count towards the chameleon jar that I've decided should be established. We mentioned it. No, we did mention this a few days ago on Drive, and I said that we should be penalized for any false chameleons that we spot that are not actually chameleons. But I think that we should just specify that it should be off when we're talking, when we're live. It can't, not when we're off air. Otherwise we are going to be broke. We are going to be very short of funds. So broke. And welcome to Debbie. Oh, actually, almost goodbye to Debbie, but we're not there just yet. Debbie, you wanted to know if bush babies have a number of preferred nest holes, or if they will only have one. They have a number of preferred nest holes, and they'll actually move from place to place, but they always seem to gather together. So despite the fact that they move from one nest site to another, depending on the day, they'll always seem to snuggle up together at night. And there's usually one, but there's occasionally even 2 males of fully grown, sexually mature males that join up with the group. So they're funny little creatures. They don't have the sort of the normal set structure and territorial and social structure of most other creatures out here. What was I saying? Oh yes, so they do have a number of nest holes. They don't always nest in holes. Sometimes they actually just find a nice thick branch with lots of leaves that they can all cuddle up on, and they'll hide there, high up in the tops of trees. So it's not always holes. In the way in which they move from place to place, they're a little bit like dwarf mongoose. You can go and find a dwarf mongoose colony, you can see them go to bed in one hole one night, and then the next day they'll all have moved to the next hole, just because that's where their foraging has taken them, and they don't want to travel too far afield. So it really is thoroughly dependent on the situation. Yes, unfortunately we didn't manage to get a bush baby on camera, but we did manage a surprise squirrel, which is utterly entertaining. And no shadow either, so we'll just have to try again for the sunrise safari to see if we can't find her. She's been very mysterious, our shadow. She's been hard to find, and actually she had up until relatively recently, she had disappeared for almost a month. Now, I'm hoping she might be spending a little bit more time on Djuma and the surrounding areas. Alright, Rebecca's voice in my ear tells me that we only have 60 seconds left of drive, which is terribly sad. It's gone very, very quickly, but it is time to do our goodbyes and our thank yous. So a big thank you to Brian for your wonderful camera work. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to the thumb for riding along with us. Brian, a drumstick thumb.
A crispy drumstick.
A crispy drumstick thumb. I love it. A big thank you to Rebecca and to Jerry in Final Control, to all of the Safari Live crew, tech team, and all of the behind-the-scenes staff. And most importantly, a big thank you to all of you for joining us, sending through your questions, comments, and all in all, making our drive that much more entertaining. We'll see you tomorrow on the Sunrise Safari. Bye-bye, everybody.